Hello everybody and welcome to Dulcimerica. My name is Futch. Thank you very much for joining me. A couple of weeks ago on episode 722, I talked about cadences, and cadences are basically the ending of a phrase in a piece of music. We discovered they could be melodic, harmonic, or rhythmic, but we focused mainly on chords and melody. Now, if you haven't seen that episode, please do go back and watch it because a lot of the stuff we're talking about today is going to be pointing back to the stuff we learned then. So we know there's tons of cadences out there, but we focused on just 4 of them for driving music forward. Let's go and do a little recap right now and see what those 4 cadences are. We're going to start with the authentic cadence. The authentic cadence is where we go from the 5 chord to the 1 chord if we're working with harmony. And if it's melody, it's just a melody phrase or a melodic phrase rather that ends on the tonic or the first note of the scale. And what this does is it brings everything home. It feels restful. It feels like a microphone drop. It feels like it could just stop right there, but that doesn't mean you have to. Obviously, you can keep doing more phrases and you can keep coming home and then leaving home and coming back home. You start from that place, typically in a piece of music, and you end there in a piece of music. But in between, you can always go back home to rest before going out and doing another phrase. So that is the authentic cadence. The plagal cadence goes from the 4 chord to the 1 chord. So it's got a way of coming home, but it doesn't sound as final. It doesn't sound as settled. It doesn't sound as restful. Melodic-wise, it is the 4th note of the scale going to the 1st note of the scale. So it, again, is a way of coming home, but it also feels like it could go out and do some more calisthenics musically. It's not quite done yet. You may not want to end with a plagal cadence, but there's nothing wrong with it if you do. Then we have the half cadence. Melodically, that means ending on the 5th note of the scale, and harmonically it means ending on the 5 chord. So what that does, implied by its name half, is it's not a full phrase, it's just part of the phrase, and then you will then typically bond it together with another type of cadence to make your phrases a bit longer. So the half cadence is going to end on 5, the melody is going to end on 5, and we know that 5 really wants to come home to 1. So if you end on 5, we know that we're not quite home yet, and we have some ways to go. Then we've got the deceptive cadence, and the deceptive cadence tries to trick you by thinking you're about to land on the 1, but you go anywhere but there. So with the deceptive cadence, melodically, it's the 5 chord going anywhere but the 1 chord. With melody, it makes you feel like you're ready to go to the tonic, but it takes a detour and goes someplace else. So you could use the 5 going to the 2 or the 4 or the 3 or any place but the 1. So you're able to prolong your melody a little bit or your chord progression a bit by not going home immediately to the 1 by, taking a little detour and coming back around the block again. These are all great ways of either keeping your phrases short or making them longer if you need them to be a bit more intricate. So let's go ahead and put it into practice, shall we? I've written a melody here, and I've written it purposely that we can use it over the next few weeks as we dig deeper into songwriting and tune writing. So let me go ahead and play you what I've got here. I've got 2 phrases per line, so a phrase will be a couple of measures. And I made it so that you'll very clearly be able to see what's going on here on the screen. Let me start off with the first line of the tune. All right, so that's a nice little melody. And if we were to trace that in the air maybe, you can see it goes upwards first, and then it kind of makes its way back down again, but it doesn't come all the way back home where we were. Well, it does. At the very end of the phrase, it comes all the way home. But halfway there, it does something else, and there's that name again. Let me go ahead and play the first part of the melody. So a cadence typically at the end of a phrase is going to be 2 chords or 2 notes at the very, very end. So that helps you kind of narrow things down to see what 2 things you need to be thinking about to create these different sensations of music. So the last 2 notes in that melody are G and A. And I'm in the key of D, D major, I'm in D-A-D tuning. So So those last two notes I played are the fourth note of the scale, G, and the fifth note of the scale, A. And we ended on that A. So what type of cadence are we looking at or listening to? That is a half cadence. That is correct. That is a half cadence. So notice how it just kind of lingers there, like it has something more to say. It's not restful. It's restless. It has something more to say. The other shoe hasn't dropped yet. And so if we wanted to make this a shorter phrase, maybe we would have taken it to an authentic cadence and brought it back home and wrapped it up very quickly. But for something longer, we want to really stretch it out. And so we're going to use a half cadence here, and then we can go ahead and add some more. So let me go ahead and play the first phrase and then put that together with the second phrase. There's our half cadence, and now that sounds final, doesn't it? That sounds restful. You could end the song right there. It wouldn't be a very long song, but you could end that and feel happy about it, feel good about it. And what do we got there? There's our half cadence. Those last two notes, that's A, the 5, and then going back to D, that is the tonic. So we have ourselves an authentic cadence. Now, we know that authentic cadences are a great way to end an entire piece of music, but it's also a great way just to come back to home base, kind of just get your bearings about you before heading back out into the musical wilderness. So that's a great place to put that in there so you can go ahead and jump on to the next phrase. So let's go ahead and look at our next line. I'm going to repeat what I already did, but I'm going to change up the melody just a little bit so that it's not exactly the same. And once again, that's a half cadence. We're ending on the 5 at that point. And then authentic cadence. So we could call that the A section of a tune. Very, very simple tune there. All right, let's go into our B section and see how we're going to change things up. This is where things get interesting now. Let me go ahead and start. Now I'm playing a D, so I'm playing the tonic, the root, but I'm not playing it at the open position. I'm playing it from 7. So all of our motion so far has had this rising and then a fall. But I'm going to start the B part with a fall. I'm going to start from the high D and start to make my way down. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, now what do you feel about that? Is it restful or is it restless? Sorry, we're ending on the 6th note of the scale. So let's take a look at our last two notes here. What's going on here? There's A, that's the 5, and then we're going to 6. So 5 going to anything but 1 is going to be a deceptive cadence. And why is that? Because when we hear the 5, that sets our ears up for going to the root note, or going to the chord built on the root. In the key of D major, when you hear an A, you expect to hear a D next. But in this case, it fools you by going to B instead. So if this were a chord, we'd go from A major to B minor instead of going from A major to D major. So in this case, with melody, just going from the 5th note of the scale, A, to the 6th note of the scale, B. And so that's a deceptive cadence. Our ears are set up waiting for the 1, both note or chord, but instead we got a 6. It's a kind of a pleasant surprise. That means we can extend that phrase a little bit longer instead of coming back home to the 1. So let me go ahead and play that again, and then I'll play it going into our next phrase. That's the end of the 3rd line. So it comes down, and that last note feels sort of settled, but it does feel like it has some more to say, doesn't it? It doesn't sound like it just wants to leave things be. There's something more to be said. We don't feel like we're all the way there yet. So let me go ahead and play that whole phrase together, and then carry it over to the final line. That is a deceptive cadence because instead of going from A, the 5, to the 1, listen to that. That is so microphone droppy. But we didn't do that. We went, and that's why it does not sound restful. It sounds restless. So that is a deceptive cadence. We're going to go ahead and move on to the last line here. Now it sounds restful. So we went from the 5 chord, hit it a couple more times, and then went to the 1. All right, so let me go ahead and play the whole melody for you, and you can hear how every single time we come to a half cadence or a deceptive cadence, that stretches out the phrase a little bit. Here we go. All right, there you have it. There is the melody. I just wrote this out. I don't have a name for it yet because we are not done writing this. We've got some other things to do. So next week, we are going to be taking this melody and then looking at the chords and along with the melody and see if we're going to stick with the chords that match the melody cadences or the melodic cadences, or we're going to change things up a little bit and make it even more interesting. We'll see how it goes. For now, play with this and play around with some other ideas. And by all means, if you haven't looked at it yet, go check out episode 722, because that's really going to help you as we move into next week's episode. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you very much. It's great to be back home from tour again, so I can really lay in heavy and start some new studies for us. So thank you, and we'll see you next week, everybody. Take care.